you find yourself lost in Irvingland. Last time, Debbie accidentally activated an alien machine as she and Penny vanished in a beam of light. I may need a moment to focus. My mind is stuck on the idea that Penny and the Bloops sounds like a 50s doo-wop girl group.
If I didn't know that there weren't eggs on this planet, I'd swear that was an omelet.
Oh, nonsense. I'm just whipping up a few exotic herbs from the hydroponic garden. Amazing what you can do with just a little seasoning and some aromatic herbs.
Share? Not in his vocabulary. It's the size of an ostrich egg, so there's plenty to go around. Around his middle while he keeps it all for himself, that is.
Is this one of your ingredients, Smith?
Carbon tetrachloride? Hardly.
But you have used it.
Of course, to remove stains.
Unfortunately, last night when he used it, he left the cap off and all the rest evaporated. There is one word that spends a lot of time floating around his vocabulary: careless.
Dr. Smith, don't you ever have any thoughts beyond your immediate needs?
Do you even need to ask? Look around the table and you'll have your answer.
Now, without the carbon tet for the purifier, we stand a very good chance of losing our entire food supply.
I could have sworn I recapped this flask.
John, is it really that serious?
It's the only certain method of food preservation we have.
So everyone is on tight food rations for now until they can come up with something.
Oh, what is that you've got there?
Oh, it is nothing at all. If I'm to be blamed for the food shortage...
It is your fault. You left the cap off. If once in your life you'd accept responsibility for your actions, your life on this planet might be a little easier.
I'm willing to provide my own from now on.
Well. Well, where'd you get this?
This? Actually, I don't remember.
Ask Penny. I'll bet she remembers. All they have to do is find her. But Will also knows, and he tells the whole thing. John just says, I trust you stayed far away from the Tauron's matter transfer machine down there. Without coming out and using the words, he says, don't mess with that stuff. You've done enough damage for one day. Meanwhile, Penny is still missing. Will and Dr. Smith decide to go look for her. Smith will bring a basket of celery to sustain them on their great safari 200 yards or so from the ship. Behold the mighty explorers.
Will, you could have carried this lunch basket. It's frightfully heavy.
A stalk of celery has the same equivalent mass and weight as a collapsing star. Didn't you know that? What do they teach you kids these days? Will says, you don't suppose she used the machine. Dr. Smith says, of course not. She's not foolish like that. Both of them reckon without considering the idea that Debbie might have gotten out of hand and made a mess, which we know is what happened. And we can tell how concerned Dr. Smith is for Penny's safety.
However, my boy, our little safari doesn't have to be a total loss, does it?
What do you mean?
Your father was a bit too modest when he said the Taurons are way ahead of us. If they can transfer themselves hither and yon, why can't we do the same?
Because we don't know how to work it and would probably end up materializing in deep space somewhere?
After all, who discovered that E equals mc squared? We or the Tauron?
I have news for you, Doctor. If they can do this matter transfer, their physics are way beyond Einstein. Stephen Hawking wasn't around yet, so Einsteinian physics were all we knew. Little known fact, Stephen Hawking first learned about black holes when Dr. Smith nearly got the Jupiter 2 sucked into one. Will got back to Earth, described what he saw, and Hawking was off and mathing to figure it out. Will says, we promised we wouldn't mess with it. Smith says, but the robot didn't. He orders the robot to go figure the machine out.
Once we get this thing working, my boy, who knows? With just a little bit of luck, I could...
Could what?
Nothing. Just a flight of fancy.
That's Dr. Smith's whole problem. I could, not we could. Nothing is happening, and Smith's well-known childish impatience kicks in, so he says, let's go. They leave the robot there, still working on the machine. And one other thing.
Oh, good heavens, I forgot my lunch basket. Would you fetch it for me, my boy?
Yes, sir. They're gone. The lunch basket and the celery's gone. They were right here. What happened, robot?
Apium graveolens have disappeared and are now in a condition of molecular change. Destination unknown.
So much for sustenance on their journey. Knowing Smith, he'll be dying of starvation by the time they make it the 50 steps to the ship. Will tells the robot, try reversing the process you just did and see if it'll come back. The robot can't really understand the machine's language, so Will says, come up with some kind of unusual, crazy signal to send it and see what it does. Clearly, that was the command to set the robot on fire.
Will, where have you been? I've been calling you. Why didn't you answer me?
They try to talk about who was out of phase and who wasn't, and as often happens with a children's discussion of that type, it gets nowhere. Penny gives up and goes off to chase Debbie again.
I gotta tell Dad.
What?
It's Penny. She must have gotten taken away by the matter transfer unit. And suddenly, right in front of my eyes, on the very spot that you're standing, I gotta tell Dad.
Well, that clears it up. Thank you, my boy. And by the way, you're bogarting the celery. Will is trying to explain that the machine works and what the implications of that are. The adults aren't listening. All they can think about is how he went to the machine when he wasn't supposed to. Smith tells a big fat lie about where he was, and Will backs him up. He says, the robot and I did it, and it works. He's trying to tell them that if they can figure out a little more detail, they can use it to go back to Earth or wherever they need to go. As I said, they aren't listening.
Now, tomorrow, Don and I are going to destroy whatever's left of that matter transfer machine. Not because we want to, but because the temptation to tamper with it is too great and too dangerous. Now, you can go right to your cabin.
In the first episode, I suggested that unlike the John Robinson in the movie, this guy listens to his son. I may have been mistaken. And Will is going to make a crucial decision.
They'd better pay attention to this sign. Do you remember all about your command capabilities?
Affirmative.
Well, listen carefully. On my command, you will initiate signals for round trip to the planet Earth.
Roger.
He'll have the robot send him to Earth, then 4 hours later reverse the signal and bring him back. He forgot his lunch bag, but there's no time to retrieve it. The machine is starting up.
I made it! I'm on Earth!
And you've already made a friend once you apologize for dropping a bunch of soap flakes on him. His name is Davy. Good name.
Where'd you come from?
Preplanus. That's a planet in another galaxy.
It would seem that the Robinsons have named the planet they're marooned on. Preplanus is a weird name. I think I would have named it Irving. The town he's landed in is Hatfield Four Corners, Vermont. I think I would have named that Irving, too. A lot easier to say.
Alpha Control, this is Will Robinson of the Jupiter 2. My position now is Hatfield Four Corners, Vermont. Come in, Alpha Control. Do you read me, Alpha Control? This is Will
Hey,
Robinson.
let me see that. Hey, you must have got this at the same dime store you got that outfit.
Hey, give me that back. Alpha Control! You busted it.
I guess he'll have to do it the old-fashioned way, by phone.
Well, now, Davy, you know I can't let you make an expensive call like that. Unless your aunt says it's all right.
I'm not Davy. I'm Will Robinson, and I've got to get in touch with Colonel Mason right away.
And I do mean old-fashioned. Looking at that phone and that switchboard, maybe he'd better ask what year it is. While Will is trying to explain yet again what's going on, Davy's Aunt Clara comes in.
On this unidentified planet, and that's where we are now. All except me, that is.
Would you care for a nice piece of apple pie and a glass of milk, Will? It is Will, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, come and sit down.
Thanks.
Will has been eyeing that sandwich Davy is holding, so I think she got there just in time. Her name was Retta Shaw, and most people will recognize her as one of the singing housekeepers in Mary Poppins. Once Will is done scarfing down the pie, she takes him into the parlor for a talk. She says, I know it's great fun pretending to be an astronaut and all that, but it's time to stop.
I remember the Robinson family very well. They were the first family in space. I guess we all remember how exciting it was when they took off last year.
So this is the correct year. It just left this town behind.
Oh, seems like such a long time ago now.
If I could just...
Things happen so fast in the world today.
Yeah, technology changes so fast in the world. Would you believe there are actually phones now that sit on your table and you can hold both parts at once, and there's a dial on it so you can do the number yourself instead of having to call what's her name? I can't picture anybody in this town being able to figure one of those things out. Will is sticking to his story, and Aunt Clara can't shake him loose from it. She takes him to the sheriff. I think some things are starting to click in Davy's brain. Not so much the sheriff. He listens to Will's story, then takes him outside.
It's all right, let us through. Come on. Now look, you stay here with the rest until the bus gets ready to leave. You hear me?
Will I be able to make my phone call soon?
Don't you worry, Sonny. Where they're going to take you, you'll get to do a lot of things. Ruth, I got a boy here I'd like to talk to you about.
He's sending him to an orphanage. Meanwhile, a reporter took Will's picture and decided he's actually going to call Alpha Control and prove that the boy's story is a fantasy. Back on whatever they're calling that planet, John and Don are trying to find Will.
What's he doing here?
Maybe that'll tell us something.
Why don't you ask the robot what he's doing there?
Warning, this instrument is a property of... You know, it's bad enough having to worry about our food supply without having to think about disciplining a boy who can't obey orders.
Well, you can't blame him, really. This gizmo's irresistible to a boy like Will.
Will! Will, where are you?
Ask the robot. Ask if he knows where Will is. Ask him if he knows anything about the machine. Ask him why fools fall in love. Ask him something. They never ask the robot. Instead, they're getting ready to destroy the machine as they said. All they have to do is get the robot to move out of the way.
Compliance not possible. All systems preempted. Fixed position must be maintained.
So unfix it and get going.
Don. Will's lunch bag. He's got me worried. He wouldn't run off and leave this here.
Ask the robot. These guys are brilliant idiots. They have one of the most sophisticated recording machines ever made on Earth standing in front of them, and they don't have the good sense to ask it a question about stuff it undoubtedly recorded since it was standing right there. As we know, this isn't the first time this has happened, and it bugs me. I know we're trying to stretch the story out to a certain length, but I have trouble believing that neither of them would think of it. Throw in the fact that the robot is refusing to move, and it might be in order to ask why. The bottom line is, it feels like bad writing. John decides they shouldn't destroy it before they find Will, just in case he did what they suspect he did. They go off to keep looking and just leave the robot. I'm too tired to rant about that anymore, so let's move on.
I'd like you to explain just what you're doing here.
All systems preempted. Fixed position must be maintained.
Really? Well, I've got a little work for you that's far more important than experimenting with celery salad or whatever it is that boy's got you doing.
As we'll find out, this far more important task is reprogramming his memory to say only nice things about Dr. Smith.
Follow me.
Imperative that I do not abandon my station. Repeat, imperative. At 1200 hours, initiate signal to matter transfer unit to return subject to original form and location.
If he had been listening, he might have learned something important. But the only thing important to Zachary Smith is Zachary Smith.
Never mind all that nonsense. You're coming with me.
Imperative that I do not abandon my...
That is a little imperative you didn't bargain for.
That thing is in a bad place. It's way too easy for any nincompoop on the planet to walk up and yank it out. He does some reprogramming and gets the robot to follow him. In Hatfield Four Corners, the other boys are harassing Will about claiming to be one of the Robinsons. Will is holding on until one of them says everybody knows the Robinsons are dead. The nice lady takes him in front of the town council, and while they're deliberating about what to do with him, Will slips out. He's still trying to find a place to make that phone call, and nobody will take him seriously.
Carbon tetrachloride. Well, give me a bottle of this. They need it real bad.
Wait a minute, that'll be 89 cents.
Can you charge it?
Who to?
Mr. John Robinson. He's my dad.
Where do you live?
Right now on Pre-Planis.
Pre-playlist? I never heard of that street. Yeah. Hey, wait a minute!
Since he can't really be Will Robinson, it can't really be stealing, now can it? The sheriff disagrees. He takes Will back to Aunt Clara and has her lock him in a room. She's trying to make the most of it, but Will says, "You already ruined everything when you took me to the sheriff instead of letting me make the phone call. The least you can do is let me be back on that roof at 12 so I can return to my family."
It is now 1142 hours by Earth time.
Oh, no, you don't.
Oh, yes, he do.
Imperative that I do not abandon my station. At 1200 hours, initiate signal to return subject to original form and location.
You will scrub that and pay attention to me, do you hear?
Or not. Do be on your way, which he'll do anyway. He's done paying attention to Smith. The family is back out looking for Will, and they see the robot zipping across the landscape with Smith bumbling along behind. You can bet all that'll have something to do with Will. Davy comes in to talk to Will. He says, "I did see a flash just before you were on that roof, so I'm starting to believe you." He asks Will what it's like in space. No games, no patronizing. He really wants to know.
It's not so different once you find a place you can live on.
Do you mean it's just like here on Earth?
Well, a person from Earth isn't so different. I mean, his feelings and all. And the forms of life you meet there, well, they're different to look at. And you have to watch out that they don't misunderstand your reasons for being there. But they're not so different either.
With rare exceptions, we've killed everyone we've come across. They all die the same when you shoot them with a laser. Davy says, "You really want to go back, don't you? Well, we have 8 minutes to get you to that roof. Let's go."
Bye, Aunt Clara. Thanks for everything.
Will! Davy! Boys!
Will's good manners may have been a mistake. Soon the whole town is running after them. Will gets on the roof and says, "I can't leave without the carbon tetrachloride."
I'll take this bottle of carbon tetrachloride. There's your money. What about your change? I'll get it later.
He gets it to Will. Will gives the coat back and says his goodbyes to Davy, and then... kaboom! Will's departure may be delayed.
There he is up on the roof.
Will you come down from there? Come down!
Make the sheriff go up and get him. I want to see him slide off the roof onto his butt.
They'll be here from Alpha Control in an hour. What'll I tell them? Oh, tell them anything.
Tell them the whole town blew the Robinsons' best chance for rescue because nobody in the place has a freaking dial telephone. Tell them to talk to Davy. He's likely to have the most useful information. Most important, tell them the Robinsons are alive out there. Tell that to the world. I like how he's hiding the bottle. He knows they're not going to believe him.
What happened to the matter transfer unit?
Signal overload. Responsible for burnout.
I have a feeling that means they won't be using it again.
What signal?
The signal that got me back here, I guess.
Back from where?
Earth.
Earth.
They don't even have to say it out loud. Their expressions say it all. He tells the story and waits for the predictable response. But it's not going to bother him this time because he's ready for it.
But it's true. I even got a bottle of carbon tet for the food storage purifier.
It is carbon tet. And it's from Hatfield Hardware.
I love that smug little nod. Maybe next time they'll take his little flights of imagination more seriously.
Come along.
Definitely won't be using that one again. Time to go find another one.
Dr. Smith, are you all right? Dr. Smith, what's wrong?
He's going to look for another machine, obviously.
Out of the way.
I am being summoned.
Dr. Smith?
Whatever's got hold of him, Will can't break him loose.
Dr. Smith!
That is the most appropriate place for him that I have seen yet. Hey, the wild thing is back. And he's wearing light-up sunglasses. Who knew they sold those down there under the sand? I want to call the Robinsons on the carpet a little over this adventure. Does Will normally make up huge stories like this and tell them around the family and try to get you to believe them? Is this regular play for him? From all we've seen, the answer is no. Then why would you assume that all of a sudden he's making all this up and trying to get you involved in an elaborate fantasy? You've told Will yourself that he's smart well beyond his years, so if he tells you something that's based on scientific stuff like this, pay attention. Will disobeyed his father by using the machine, and I don't doubt he'll be disciplined for it. But his parents need to go stand in a corner for a while, too. And not both in the same corner. They'd enjoy that too much. I'll see you next time you find yourself lost in Irvingland.